Hey listeners, welcome back to another episode of the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Kelly, and today we're going to be speaking with Dave Berube, who is a principal consultant at Lifecycle Engineering. Dave's joining the podcast today to explain what it means to be a champion during a time of organizational change. He'll explain how to succeed in the champion role and the common traits a champion possesses that makes them stand out. Now, let's get the conversation started with Dave Berube and how to establish yourself as the champion of your next change initiative. Dave, thank you so much for joining the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. I know you and I have been kind of going back and forth for a couple weeks trying to coordinate you to be on the podcast, and here you are in the building, ready to go. And thank you so much for sharing your insight and your time. So like I do every other episode, I'd like to kick this off with talking about you first, the guest. So if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of your background information to kick off the show.
Sure, Derek. I spent 20 years in the Navy on nuclear submarines. I retired as a chief petty officer. Within the Navy, I was actually an INC technician by trade, and I was also a nuclear reactor operator. So I was responsible for operating and maintaining all the electronic components for the reactor on the nuclear submarine. And obviously, nuclear submarine, very high reliability asset, and we were kind of born and bred into all the best practices of operations and maintenance reliability. I kind of carried that through in my career and also did training. I was a master training specialist and did 2 tours at the Nuclear Power Training Command, teaching math, physics, digital microprocessors, electronic fundamentals, and other courses. When I retired from the Navy, I kind of continued taking my experience into the civilian world, and I did some major change initiatives within manufacturing. I found I had a passion for implementing these change initiatives and joined Lifecycle Engineering as a consultant, and I continue implementing these change transformations for Fortune 500 companies. And as a previous change champion myself, I love working with other change champions to implement change in organizations.
So you're very much a Navy man and have a ton of experience with change management activities. So obviously that's why we selected you for this podcast episode. Now, kind of diving into an article that you wrote, the title was, "Are You a Champion of Change?" You set the stage for the reader by assigning them as the champion for a company-wide change initiative. Before we talk about this role in depth, what are some examples of change initiatives that manufacturing facilities might undergo?
Well, quite a few change initiatives. I think some of the common ones you would see in almost all manufacturings would be some type of enterprise asset management implementation, such as SAP. SAP implementations seem to rock the world of people, and it's because it is a major initiative, and it definitely affects a lot of people. Other changes you might see are behavior-based safety initiatives. You could see Lean Six Sigma implementations and reliability improvement implementations, such as our Reliability Excellence Program.
Now let's talk about that champion role a little bit, Dave. Why is it so important for a manufacturing facility today to assign a champion during a time of change?
Well, I would say it is critical to have a champion. Passion is something that's hard to fake. You know, it's really important to have an owner, someone who truly owns this initiative, that is out there passionate every day preaching the word for that change. When they're out there building coalitions of support with others, that passion is just infectious, and we get more people on board. So it's definitely an important role that you can't do without on the change.
Okay, so we're talking about one person in one specific job role, and a very important job role at that. But change takes more than just one person to have a complete transformation and successful outcome, right?
Oh, definitely. So as this person is out there with that passionate ownership of this change, we're asking them to go out there and build coalitions of support. So this change champion is going to be out there talking to other leaders, and we would say, he's kind of coaching, up and down and side to side. So when we're done, we would have a coalition of senior sponsors and champions out there promoting this change. So it's not just the project person owning it. We soon now have the entire plant owning this change. So it's definitely important.
Dave, in your article, you write champions must be ... and you list several characteristics. Can you explain what these traits are that make for a successful champion of change?
Yeah, one of the big ones, and this is where we tend to make mistakes with implementations, is the person has to be credible. I just can't assign a project to anybody. So if we're going to do, let's say, an SAP implementation, it's kind of hard if I'm the accounting manager and I'm in charge of the SAP implementation. I really don't have as much credibility. So we want the person to be very credible to the audience that we're implementing, to be seen as an expert or to be seen as that champion of the change. And another one would be, is besides being credible, they got to be somebody who is willing to lead from the front. When we talk major change, being visible to the employees is important. It's not enough to just say, I support the change, I'm behind this. People have to see your support and see it visible every single day. You got to be a good communicator. I'm going to be out. The best way to communicate is face-to-face, and the only way to do that is get out of your office and go down to the shop floor and talk to people face-to-face. If I'm going to build trust, I can't build trust in my office. I got to do it face-to-face. So we're asking this person to build coalitions and to build trust in the organization. And I think those characteristics are essential. You know, so when you're looking for that person, it just can't be some project person, you know, some project manager. It's got to be somebody who has not only the organization skills maybe of a project manager, but they've got to have those leadership skills to make this successful.
All right, Dave, now I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about real-world scenario. Now, we just got done talking about the characteristics that make up a good champion of change. And you told me before the show that you led a change initiative in the past, and I kind of just want you to talk a little bit more in detail about that. So how did that change initiative go from your perspective? Do you mind talking a little bit more in detail about that?
Sure, I'll do that. I'll tell you, I'll give a description of one that I did early in my career. It's probably more interesting because I'd say I'd made a lot more mistakes during that one. There's things I did really well and things that I would have done better. So I just retired from the Navy. So I'm used to doing, lots of reliability on a submarine. We had procedures, we had discipline to follow the procedures. And when I took my first civilian job, they had a lot of nice procedures, but nobody seemed to follow them. People operated the equipment almost any way they wanted. Maintenance discipline was weak. They had PM procedures. They may or may not follow them. So I said, okay, I can make a difference here. So I had a lot of passion for this because it's what I lived my entire career. I was able to establish the credibility early with my workers. And I immediately started off to get some improvements. We got some quick wins. We were really getting my guys and my crew were getting real energized with this. But when I look back and think, man, what could I have done better with that initiative? I would tell you one thing is you can't go it alone. I learned that really, really quickly. So if I go back, I would have done a really better job being that coalition builder. Because as I try to broaden the message and broaden the learnings across the plant, not having that coalition strong enough was a detriment. So now I was playing catch up. So now I had to spend more time now being a coalition builder. Had I done it earlier, I'd probably been more successful faster. So I thought that I learned that lesson. I think the other one, and everyone seems to learn this lesson, is even in theory you can over communicate. I don't think I've ever seen it. Every time I do an initiative, even back then at the first time, I would have done a whole lot of things different for communicating. Research shows, and I got to see every bit of that research proven, was if I could have done it over, I would have communicated earlier. I would have communicated more often, right? I would have communicated in multimedia methods and really focus hard on that, getting that feedback, and really pushing hard for that feedback because that's critical, and it would have made things go faster. So really effective communication will build trust faster, and when you have high trust, you tend to have higher speed with implementations. I think when I also look back and think, well, was there anything else I really could have done better on this? I still think that having that change management methodology would have helped. I have to admit, at that time, I was probably just winging it. I was just using the leadership skills I knew from the military. And yes, a lot of those are steeped in change management, but it really wasn't a methodology. It wasn't a step-by-step, very deliberate methodology. Again, I'd say I was winging it. I was just kind of going by feel, doing what I kind of knew I should be doing. And now that I have a lot more years of experience and understand change management methodologies, I think that would have really made things go well. I found when I started learning the methodologies, I said, wow, that's what I was doing, but I didn't call it that. I see why that was effective, and I saw why some things I didn't do were not effective. So I think having that methodology is really important. Project management, I think that was something I already had. I already had a good discipline for create a plan, implement the plan, and I think most places do. Most places I work with have decent project management discipline. It's really dealing with the people side. I think that they struggle. So my implementation was very successful. We were implementing reliability best practices. We improved fairly quickly, and when I had a new plant manager came in the plant that had the same passion for what I was doing, we were off to the races. And within just a few short years, we were at world-class levels for maintenance and reliability in that organization. So it's something that I think the entire team was real proud of, that they really accomplished that. Very high levels of performance, right? Very low downtime numbers. At some point we were less than 1% downtime in the plant. So we definitely some significant achievements by that group. And I still keep touch with those guys. They're still I still proud of them. I still try to follow them, see where they're going, see what they're doing, visit them when I can. So it's definitely something I'm still passionate about. And I guess what's fun is now I get to go do this implementation with clients. I can share with clients the same mistakes I made to make sure that they don't make those same mistakes. And a lot of times when people talk about consultants, do we really need a consultant? Well, I mean, one of the benefits we bring is we know where those landmines are. And usually because we stepped on them ourselves. We're not coming in with just some theory where we just read a book and we kind of know how it should work in theory. We've out there and practiced it, right? Stumbled sometimes, fell flat on our face, but we got back up, and we tried it again. So I'd like to, keep doing that. I really enjoy doing it. I have fun traveling around the world and helping companies implement these major change initiatives. And I think that what's even more fun is when I get to witness a champion within that organization, because I know when they've really got that change champion taking ownership, I know that organization is going to be successful. When you've got the right person, when they're building coalitions, when they're out there communicating, from the front, I know they're going to be successful, and typically they are successful.
Okay, so now as we get ready to wrap up this episode, we're down to our final question, and it's a very important question. And so I want to talk about how to ensure the effectiveness as a champion of change. So what are the key factors here?
Oh, that is lots of factors. I think one of the first ones is for whatever change you're implementing, it's got to align with the company's vision. Too many times we're having initiatives that come out of left field. And when we go to try to implement those in the plant, people don't understand why we're doing it. They don't see where it fits. And a lot of times it does fit, but we've never communicated the vision. So having that vision alignment has to happen. It makes that work. Something else is going to be, I'm going to just say methodologies. There's methods for implementing. So one method you want to look at is project management. I should have a project management methodology. Your project management typically might be project management certified, right? PMP certified. There's a methodology. You got a nice body of knowledge. It lists, step by step the methodology for project management. But also when we talk methodology, we want to look at the people side. There's also methodologies out there that deal with how do I step by step go through the people side of change. And then one of the methodologies we use is the ProSci methodology. You hear about people have heard about ProSci, hear about ADKAR. It's a very concrete, easy way for our clients to step by step get them through that change. And another one that's really underutilized, I would say effectively, is communication. People are so, I guess, wrapped up in using technology to communicate, and they want to send out the email because it's really efficient. I can send them out to everybody. I'll send out a 3-page email to explain the whole project. But people miss that communication is not about the activities you do to send messages. If nobody receives a message, you failed as a communicator. So we really have to think about an effective communication strategy. We have to have more than one medium for communicating. So when you talk communication theory, people need to be communicated to for that same message 5 to 7 times. And they've also got to get it from multiple sources. They also need to hear from their peers. So if I'm out there as a champion preaching the message, that's nice. They trust me, let's say. But they also want to hear it from others, other people they trust, from their coworkers. Maybe people even outside my organization would be someone they're looking for approval. So that's going to be important, which is one of the reasons why when we communicate and have our strategy for communication, we've got to have a coordinated effort. I've got to make sure that every member of the organization that's communicating is synchronized, that we have the same messages, that we're listening and getting feedback. And once again, that we're trying to use face-to-face as much as possible. One of the positive things about face-to-face communication is I can get feedback. You know, people will tell me if they don't get it, if I'm listening. It's interesting when I do even small presentations with employees. A lot of times it ends up you can facilitate almost a venting session. And the employees will tell me about everything going on in the organization as long as we're willing to listen. Too many times we're too busy talking and we're not listening to the employees. So as we're communicating, we have to make sure that we have some mechanism for feedback. Now, one of the things we do, I know a lot of our other consultants do, we do what we call communication blitzes. And all it really is a focused communication effort followed up by checking, did they receive the message? So I could have a town hall meeting, we're out there communicating, sounds really good, everyone's loving it, and then maybe a couple days later or a week later, we'll go in the plant and start asking. And find out, did they really understand or did they retain any of the information we said? And typically in a lot of communications, people might retain 20%. So it's real important for us to circle back, ask questions, and determine did they really get that message. So again, communication is critical. We could probably spend a whole little podcast here talking about communication.
Oh, yeah.
Another one is going to be about results. And this is what's really, really difficult. Because some of the implementations we talked about take a lot of time. People get real impatient. They need to see results. So when we're doing this, and this is almost a combination of the project management and change management methodologies put together. So as part of the project management, we would highly recommend that we program in getting some quick wins. How can you tactically show people that this works, to prove it to them? A lot of people are resisting the change because they just don't believe it. They honestly, in their heart, don't believe it's going to work, and they need proof. So if we can get them some of that proof, it'll go a long way. A lot of times for the quick wins, depending on the implementation, it'll help self-fund the project, which gives even more support from upper management when things get self-funded. So we want to see those quick win results, but then we also want to see long-term results. Too often we stop measuring. When we hit a few milestones, all of a sudden we stop measuring, and this soon becomes a flavor of the month. So one of the other things we talk about is sustainability. How are we going to sustain the change for the long term? How are we going to make sure we cement all these changes? Are we going to align our systems to make this work? Do I have to make org structure changes to make this work? Do I have to have different leadership behaviors to kind of anchor the culture in our new way? So when we talk sustainability, we're talking reinforcement. How am I going to reinforce the change? Something as simple as even asking a question at a morning meeting to expect the status of some change. Building in, like you might see in a lean program, the progress control boards that are out on the floor, and it really becomes a daily huddle that happens at these boards, and it now becomes a way of life, that this is what we do. We talk about our top 5 problems. We talk about, hey, how's the root cause going? We might see some 5 why analysis happening within the plant. So all those things are critical if we want to sustain these changes and keep them for a long time.
All right, listeners, that does wrap up today's episode on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and really quick, big shout out and thank you to Dave Berube for taking the time to kind of teach us a little bit more about the champion role during a change initiative. But really quick, we did mention his article within this podcast, which is titled, Are You a Champion of Change? So if you want to learn more about this or read his article, please visit the show notes and click on the link located there. So yes, thank you again for listening, and we look forward to another episode on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. Hey, listeners, one more thing before you go. If you have any feedback for the show, or you have maybe some suggestions for upcoming topics you'd love to hear about, we'd like to hear from you. So there's 2 ways to get in contact with us. The first is on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @LCE_today, so be sure to follow us. And then the other way is to email the show at podcast@lce.com. Once again, thank you for joining the show, and we look forward to more episodes on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast.